Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the TF Cast. My name is Willis Stout, and today we're recording from the Solarium. The date is July 27th.
And I'm your host, Jacob Bases. Today with us, we have Kendra and Carissa of Hot Dish Productions to talk about their upcoming production of Bonnie and Reed, a musical story about two pirates.
Nailed it.
Right.
I think you could probably give us a little bit more information. So how about introduce yourselves and introduce the production, and then we have quite a bit to talk about.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, well, I'm Carissa. As he said, this is Kendra. We have a show in the Minnesota Fringe Festival this year called Bonnie and Reed. It is a musical about two pirates, two female pirates, two real-life female pirates that actually lived. So we are telling their tale. We're doing a little bit of a take on men telling female stories and telling it inaccurately at times and taking that story back. We're using Sea Shanties. Everyone loves a good sea shanty. That's our musical base, but we've done all new original arrangements for all of those. It's the story of Anne Bonny and Mary Reed. So yeah, consider it pitched.
Where did the story come from? I mean, how did you come across this story, and what led to the concept?
Yeah, we have a podcast, which I'm sure we'll get into later. And part of that podcast is talking about incredible women throughout history. Some of them we may know about. A lot of times it's stories that are completely new to us. And one of my bad bitches was Anne Bonny, and that's honestly the first time I had heard of her. And Mary Reed is very integrated into her story. And as most things with us do, it became a joke as we were recording the podcast that this should be our next Fringe show. And we like to turn our jokes into reality. So here we are.
Here we are.
And the Fringe shows, how long have they been going on? And how long have you been a playwright?
This is our second show that we have produced, written, directed, acted in for the Minnesota Fringe Festival. The first one we did was in 2019. It was called Chicago the Musical. It was a parody of the musical Chicago, and we made it all Minnesota references. We had Paul Bunyan. We had, it was Roxy and, why can't I think of, Velma.
Velma,
Yep. And they moved to Minnesota, and chaos ensues. And it did really well. At the festival. We got a couple of awards for that show, which was incredible for first-timers. And so we're back, doing it again.
That's awesome. So are these written each year in preparation for the festival? So
Yes.
it's not a repeat thing?
Yeah, absolutely.
Once the show is written, do you then bring it around, or could you tour it around if you wanted to?
Yeah, we did a Mankato performance of Chisago, and that went really well, and we're hoping to do the same for Bonnie and Reed.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
I know nothing about the Fringe Festival. Could you just fill me in a little bit, because I am knowing nothing.
It's this really cool festival. They happen all over the world. But we have one here in Minnesota where artists can basically put on a show and do whatever they want. Different Fringe festivals have different ways that they get artists. Some of them you have to submit your work and be accepted. The Minnesota Fringe Festival is a lottery. So you put in for the lottery and then they draw out however many spaces they have. I think there's close to 120.
Yeah, I think 119 was the number I heard.
Different artists with different venues and different size spaces. And then you're basically given a space and 5 performance days, and you get to do with that whatever you want. There are people like us that write musicals or straight plays. Some people will do adaptations of existing shows. There's dance, there's puppets, there's storytelling, there's experimental theater, improv.
Circus.
Yeah.
Wow.
I've seen burlesque, I've seen drag,
Yeah.
basically anything you can think of, it's probably up there or has been before. It's a really cool opportunity.
Yeah.
Sure.
What inspired? So how did you find out about the festival, and then what was the we got to apply for this? We're We should do it.
Yeah. So Carissa and I met doing Merrily Players Community Theater here in town. And one of our good friends, Travis Carpenter, has been a Fringe performer for a long time, Fringe writer, director, all that. And we came up with the idea for Chisago at a karaoke night. It was like Bonnie and Reed, a joke. We were like, hey, let's take Cell Block Tango from Chicago, make it Minnesota themed, call it Ice Block Tango. And we told that to him, and he's like, you need to apply for Fringe. I think you have a show.
He had been trying to get us to apply for years.
Yeah.
And it was something about that idea. And literally it was, we had let's do Cell Block Tango as Ice Block Tango. And I think we had 3 of the 6
word
words
replacements
changed. And that's all we had. And we were like, let's take it and run with it.
Yep. And we wrote that show in 3 days.
Yeah.
It was over a weekend.
Wow.
Yeah. It wrote itself, which was pretty great.
Yeah.
Well, so writing a show sounds like a pretty massive undertaking for most people, I think. You said you wrote that one in 3 days. Like, what's the process of writing a show like, or at least how you've done it up to this point?
For us, we typically start by like chunking it out, doing an overarching beginning, middle, end, the standard. Chisago was a little weird because we were working with a structure that already existed.
It's kind of like a remix more so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And people, when they write parodies, do all sorts of things, but we like to stay as close to the actual lyrics as we can. So when we're writing like rhyming schemes, we try to stay as close to the actual lyrics as we can, which kind of made some challenges. So that one was a little harder to kind of like puzzle piece together. But we generally come up with an overarching concept, and then we like to lock ourselves away. We typically rent an Airbnb or something and lock ourselves away for a weekend and just see where the creative inspiration takes us.
Yeah. Bonnie and Reed took a little bit longer to write just because we had to do more research. We didn't have that structure that Chisago had. We knew we were going to deal with Sea Shanties, so we tackled those first. We figured out which songs we wanted to use, what songs could actually move the plot along, and how they could move the plot along. And once we figured that out, it was just filling in dialogue to, figure out any missing gaps.
This show is also kind of difficult because we only have 50 minutes.
Yes.
And we're trying to tell the story of Anne, we're trying to tell the story of Mary, and then we're trying to tell the story of them together. And it was a lot to cram into 50 minutes.
Yeah.
And so figuring out how to do that without gaps or like weird jumps or like giving things the time it needed I think that was one of the biggest challenges of the show.
For sure.
What can you tell us as a little teaser about those 2 women and why they were important enough to write a show about?
You did the podcast segment on Anne, so go ahead.
That's true. Well, one of the biggest things is just that they were female pirates. And that comes up in the show. A lot of historians will tell you there's nothing remarkable about them except for the fact that they were women. I don't believe that's true. Mary dressed as a man to get by in a man's world for a while and was an incredible fighter. She was incredibly badass. She risked her life to save people she loved on multiple occasions. Anne was very smart. There's a story in the podcast, or there's a story in the show where an enemy ship approaches and like mass chaos ensues. And instead of fighting, Anne decides to take a mannequin, hack it apart, pour blood on it, and stand over it with a machete to make it look like she has just dismembered a human being and they haven't touched anyone, and it scares the ship away. And like, that's an actual story. So like, she is brilliant. She was also a brilliant fighter. And they were incredibly brave.
Yeah, they fought when no one else would, which is a big part of their story as well.
Yeah.
Do you get a sense what pirate life was like back then? Would someone get a sense from the show?
It's a musical, so it's probably a little more glamorous than pirate life really is.
Sure.
Yeah. I don't know. We asked all of our cast if after doing the show, they would want to be a pirate. If the opportunity arose, would you be a pirate? And it was split pretty 50-50. There were some that were like, no, hard pass. And there were others that were like, yep, sign me up. Absolutely. So
we probably apply a little bit of a glamorous sheen to the
yeah,
stories.
Yeah.
Yeah. We get to shower when it's done.
Yeah, true.
They probably didn't.
When we were doing the research as well, there were a lot of things that were like, yeah, actually being a pirate's really boring. There's a lot of sitting around, a lot of ship work.
Yeah.
We just like the exciting parts, so that's all we talk about.
Yeah.
Sure. And earlier you were talking about how like these stories are often like told through the like lens of like the male perspective. Is that kind of like where that like, oh, they're not exceptional in any way except for that they're women? Like, was that like a way that their stories like were gone about being not told in comparison to like the household name pirates that we have?
Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And we touch on that in the show a little bit, not to spoil it, but that line, there was nothing remarkable about their piratery other than they were
women.
Yeah, something along those lines is in the show. That's a direct quote we pulled from one of the history books we were reading. And Anne and Mary, not to spoil it, don't take that lightly. But yeah, I think that's definitely, we've also, not to plug another pirate, but one of our early episodes, we talk about Jing Shi, who is the most badass pirate that has ever lived. Like, I kid you not, she has, this is going to sound horrible, killed more people than like all the other pirates combined. Her story is incredible. We know of like Blackbeard, and he's like a worm compared to her. And nobody knows about her because she's a woman, and also honestly likely because she's Asian. And we just don't tell those stories or celebrate those stories as much as others.
Well, this sort of can bring us into your podcast, which you mentioned features prominent women over history. Why don't you, give us a little intro on the podcast, and then tell us how these kind of play together.
Yeah. So our podcast is called You Say Bitch Like It's a Bad Thing. It's comprised of 2 segments. The first segment, we alternate every week, so we get a little taste of both. The first segment is our quote unquote bitching segment, where we talk about, injustices in the world, things that are making us mad that week, which recently has, we haven't struggled coming up with topics. And we talk about those, a lot of things that go on in the world today are rooted in sexism and racism and misogyny, and we just kind of want to shed light on some of those things. And then the second half, we talk about incredible women that people may or may not know of, and who do incredible things, and kind of shed light on them. So,
did you all meet through the podcast, or are you longtime friends, or just come through theater work?
We met in theater, so we've been friends for 5, 7.
I think it's 7 years. I think it was 2015. It was 2015.
Yeah. So that's how we met, and we became very fast friends. And when the pandemic hit, we kind of lost our creative outlets because theaters were obviously closed. And we had joked about doing a podcast, and as we do, things we joke about
turn into...
Yep.
There's a theme.
So that's how that came about.
Yeah, and I think a podcast is something we both wanted to do for a long time. And so this was kind of the door opened for us to be able to do that. And we started out in our respective closets. We picked a closet in each of our houses for sound purposes, recorded from there over video call, and now we can do it together, which is really fun.
Yeah.
That was actually my next question, is how long has the podcast been going on, and like just how much of it is there if our audience wants to check it out?
Yeah, I think our first episodes dropped September of 2020.
Yep.
Yeah.
So almost 2 years.
Yeah.
We're at episode 87-ish.
No way. We have like this. We started our podcast at the same time, and I think we have like literally the same number of podcast episodes.
Aw, twins.
This might be 88 right now. We're recording.
I think
89. Yeah,
it's one of those. It's basically the same. And if you look too closely at our numbers, there's one that's missing. We just
Well, now I'm gonna find it.
Oh no! Some subset of people will know now.
Yeah.
The ghost episode.
we used to release episodes every week. We don't anymore now that, the pandemic's not over, but world is getting slightly back to normal. We have less time. So we've moved to every other week. But yeah.
What do you like best about doing the podcast?
I love the research.
Same.
I really love learning about things that are going on, people in the world. I've learned so much doing this podcast. It's bananas.
Yeah. I think one of the main reasons we started it was to educate ourselves. There was a lot going on in 2020 when we started, and a lot of issues that we wanted to be able to do something about or know about, or I, at the time, worked for a boss who would occasionally make comments that I didn't necessarily like, and I wanted to be able to be knowledgeable enough to speak to those things and make a difference. And it was one of those things that, like, in my heart of hearts, I was like, I know this is wrong and I should do something about it, but I didn't know enough to do anything about it. And that's one thing this podcast has really done, is taught me how to talk to people, just being knowledgeable on those things, where to look for what to do when you're passionate about something. Yeah, that's my favorite part.
Yeah. I think educating ourselves I remember having a conversation at the beginning of us developing the podcast that even if nobody listens, we're learning something.
For sure.
Oh, and eventually, I mean, there's no way if you keep doing it that people won't listen. I mean, it's just, it is what happens with podcasts. You continue, and then eventually, I mean, there's some podcasts that shouldn't have people listening. There they are.
We're not going to talk about those.
Yeah, that's awesome that you sort of used it as a tool for study or research or whatever.
Yeah.
Self-study.
We, again, when trying to find a topic, we're joking about, like, okay, what do we like? We run, but we don't know enough about running to do a running podcast, and who wants to listen to a running podcast? And like, we're like, oh, we like movies, but there are plenty of movies. We like true crime. Oh, we like bitching. You can't make a podcast out of bitching. Well,
Here we are.
We were like, how do we make it productive?
Yep. 80 some episodes later.
Yep.
Sure. Like, what I can't imagine, like, what actually, like, going through and like I look into people when I produce this podcast.
Yeah.
And like I try and find something I can direct our listeners to. But like actually coming up with and like being able to like speak on and educate people on a topic that I learned about last week sounds terrifying to me.
Yeah.
So real kudos to you for that and taking on a topic that's, I mean, it's wild the way things have gone recently, how we've like rolled back to like nearly like just this like old school, like kind of like, well, maybe sexism is good.
Yeah,
like,
right.
Yeah,
Exactly.
Yeah. We're like, excuse me. No.
Yeah. Does your podcast like to get into those challenging topics?
Oh, yes.
Absolutely.
We've had some very hard-hitting topics, some that affect us personally. But again, it's good to talk about things like that. It's good to, pull back the veil and see how it really affects people.
Yeah. And it's scary sometimes too, because right now our podcast episodes are like hour 15-ish, which is still longer than most podcasts are. Sorry to those who listen or want to listen. But, and even when we started, they were more like an hour and a half. But even in like a 30, 40-minute segment, like you can't cover everything there is on all of those topics. And so I think it's a little scary that you're going to miss something or misrepresent something, but we would rather do the research, give it a shot, discuss it amongst ourselves, and then hopefully we like to guide people to other resources to do their own research if they're interested as well. So yeah, if you want some books that are going to make you angry, let me know. We've got some.
You got the book list.
Yeah, full library.
Sure. Where can people find it? Like if they just want to check out the podcast.
We have a website.
Oh, don't go to it. It's
We
very
haven't
outdated.
we haven't updated it in a long time. According to the website, we only have 20 episodes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been a while since we've updated that. But we do have social media platforms: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. You say B podcast across all platforms.
And we are streaming on pretty much anywhere you find podcasts: Stitcher, Spotify,
Apple.
iHeartRadio, Apple.
Yeah.
Are you two avid podcast listeners yourself?
I was for a while.
I go through phases.
It's been a
Okay.
minute. I haven't really had time to actively listen, but
Yeah.
So it wasn't like I listen every day. We need to make one. It was more like this seems.
I
seems
used
like
to.
Yeah.
I
Okay,
used to
so
listen
could have
all the
inspired it.
time. Yeah.
Yeah. And when we were developing the podcast, we pulled a list of the podcasts that we liked, and we were like, okay, we don't want to copy, but I like the way that this podcast did this thing and this podcast did this thing. And if we can kind of combine our forces, we can come up with something really great.
Do you think that your process of working together on the podcast makes it easier or better for working together for something like writing play, and why or why not?
I do. I don't want to speak for both of us, but I do.
Oh, I absolutely don't.
Rude.
No, I would agree. I think the more we work together, the more we learn each other's quirks.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's always something you're going to have when you're working in a duo, especially on something creative.
Yes.
Creative things are vulnerable, and it can be really tricky to do that with a partner. And so learning each other's quirks, learning when the other person is getting like tired or frustrated
Yes.
can definitely be a thing.
Yep. Ice cream breaks help.
All the time. Yeah.
Nice. Oh, we haven't tried that, Jacob.
Yeah.
Highly suggest.
We get tired and frustrated. We never had any ice cream.
Yeah. Highly suggest a mom and pop stop. That's our go-to.
We're a burrito team.
Oh,
There
also
we
a solid
go.
choice. Yeah.
Maybe we'll add that for the
We
next
should,
time.
for sure. Yeah.
Let's talk about some of like the personal history with I didn't ask how either of you like originally got into theater or like what brought you into the performing arts or any of this really.
Yeah. I've been a performer since birth, pretty much. If you ask my parents, I've been performing since I was born. But I've done theater in high school. I sang in college. And when I'm originally from St. Peter. I went to college up in Duluth, and I moved back to southern Minnesota for a while. And I was going through a pretty decent heartbreak. And my mom was like, hey, Merely Players is holding auditions for a show. You should do it. I was like, well, fine. So I did. I got in. That was the show before I met Carissa. And I'm very glad that I auditioned for that show.
Did you, sorry to interrupt, did you know you were going to, so you'd kind of gotten out of it from school, and then did you ever think you'd be back into theater and performing?
I think I always knew deep down that I was a performer at heart, and that's what makes me happy. I don't know. There's no greater feeling than being on stage and just like feeling the appreciation from the audience. There's nothing that
I thought you were going to say there's no greater feeling than applause.
I mean, there's that too.
You're not wrong.
I know.
All right.
Yeah.
Cool. Go for it.
I also have been performing since I was a wee child. My earliest memory of acting was in like second or third grade. We did Teacher from the Black Lagoon in class, and my name got drawn to play the teacher. And my mom is amazing at making costumes. And so she like decked me out, and I was in the character, and I was like, I am a star. And nothing ever changed since then.
I don't know if I knew that about you.
Probably not.
Oh my gosh.
It doesn't
funny.
come up very often.
That's funny.
But yeah, I don't know. I've just always done theater. I think I'm a person with big emotions. We talk on the podcast about being empaths, and I think sometimes the world doesn't feel super friendly to being able to feel or share your emotions, and so being able to do that on stage through another character can be really cathartic.
Yes.
I think that's part of why I really like it. And then I think that's also why I love writing and creating, because I can express things and feelings in like a more abstract way.
Mm-hmm.
Like a fight scene.
For sure, yeah.
Like a fight scene.
I snooped the social media just like
Sure.
a little bit, so I saw that like the first day of fight scene choreography and
Yeah, there's a lot of sword fights in this show.
Yeah.
how do you go from not telling people how to sword fight to like
That is a great question.
Neither of us are trained in fight choreography.
Yeah.
So it was a lot of trial and error with not swords.
Yeah, have you done sword fights in
No,
shows?
because the one show, Robin Hood, was the only show that I was in that had fight choreo, and
That's
I was
not-
the queen.
Shakespeare had fight choreo.
Oh, Shakespeare did have fight choreo. No,
But
I don't think
you
I did.
that. I've been in a show with fight choreo. I directed a show in high school with fight choreo, but I think our technical director did that because he was an adult and we were technically children.
oh sure.
But yeah, we did some research on YouTube,
Mm-hmm.
and then it was literally just grab something sword-like and let's see what feels good, what seems natural.
Yep. There was a lot of, okay, if we were actually in a sword fight, what would you do next?
Yeah.
Like, we're here. Where do you go?
The trickiest one is we have one small part where Kendra is fighting two people, but when we blocked it, it was just the two of us. So it was like, okay, let's get you in this position. Someone's going to do this. Then what do you do? Okay, now if there was someone behind you and I'll run behind you, what would I do and what would you do? Yeah.
Yeah. But one of our sword fights is set to music, which helped,
Absolutely.
I think, a lot because we both have done enough shows where we dance. So combining the dance with the fight choreo I had a lot of fun developing that.
Yeah, same. I think that's my favorite in the whole show.
Yeah, same.
This just sounds awesome. I don't even
Yeah,
know what I was expecting.
I
but-
can't. I have over and over again wanted to like sit down and like write even just like a script for like either radio drama or like something to make a film piece out of. And never have I felt more acute writer's block. I have nothing but admiration for what you do. So I'm like taking notes hard right now. Like I don't know. Like it just I can't. There's something about the way that like dialogue actually happens and then getting the point across like in a way that makes sense to the audience. Because I feel that all the time when I'm watching television now. I feel like it's almost like they're not talking to each other. They're like simultaneously addressing the audience in like a way
Absolutely.
that you don't have to derive anything from the text. And it's a little bit annoying sometimes when shows spoon feed it to you that hard.
Yeah.
So when I'm writing, I don't want it to feel like that.
We hate dialogue.
Yeah. Yep.
So why do we write, you ask? We don't know. But that's what was nice about Chisago is it was like 90% music and like probably a minute and a half total of dialogue.
Yeah.
This one, not so much.
So much. We timed all of the songs just to kind of see where we were at after writing them. And we were like, cool, like 12 minutes of songs. What are we going to do with this 38-minute chunk that we have to fill somehow?
But yeah,
fights.
I feel that we struggle with that sometimes too, for sure.
Yeah.
Do you do the musical arrangements on your own, or is that
Yeah, I did the musical arrangements for this.
that's awesome? Like, is that like the kind of thing that you like sit down with like some kind of like notation program like Sibelius or something? And
Yeah, I did a little bit with my keyboard at home, and then most of it I did with, I found a free program called Flat, highly suggest. That's like a sheet music software, and I just plugged away to see what sounds good. And yeah.
And it does.
Thank
It
you.
sounds amazing. All of the songs, hearing everyone sing like Wellerman for
Yeah.
the first time, I got goosebumps, like full body goosebumps. I was like, this is fantastic.
are there musicians accompanying, or is it a backing track?
It's a cappella.
Acapella.
Oh, cool.
We said go big or go home.
Yep.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're out there on the boat, I suppose.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's also the space we're in is kind of tricky. Last year we used backing tracks, and it's really hard to balance that with the vocals.
Yeah, because we're not mic'd.
No. So we really wanted to stay away from backing tracks, and we love musicians. Both of our parents are musicians and music teachers, but it's just an added thing to have to coordinate, and we're already coordinating 8 actors while writing and marketing and producing our own show. So
Yeah, and our cast is so incredibly talented.
Absolutely.
We have 6 of our closest friends. We lucked out in the friend department real bad. And they I don't want to say they're stupid enough to say yes to our ideas, but they're stupid enough to say yes to our ideas, and they are so incredibly talented, and they take everything that we do and exceed our wildest expectations. So
earlier you mentioned that this was done by lottery and that spaces were assigned.
Yeah.
Explain, like, because you just said the space was difficult. Were you just like given a room and then?
Yeah.
pretty much, yeah.
So when you sign up for the lottery, there are 3 different tiers based on audience size. And you can sign up for as many as you want. If you get drawn in more than one, you just have to pick which one you want. And so we are in the largest size tier and auditorium. And then each of those tiers has a specific number of venues in the cities. And you fill out a little form that's like, here's what my show's going to be like. Here's kind of what I might want or not want.
Please don't put us in the round.
Pretty much. And then they have to take it, which also the Fringe, I don't know how the Fringe staff does it.
I don't either.
They take like a weekend where they take everyone and put them in all of the different spaces and see how they can make it fit and schedule it. And then, you're just told your performances are these days in this space. And we don't get to see the space until
our tech rehearsal.
We have 4 hours in the space before we open. So we're lucky enough this year to perform on the same stage that we had last year, which makes it easier, especially because it's a thrust stage.
Yeah, those are tricky.
So you've got audience on 3 of the 4 sides, essentially.
And you said don't put us in the round. Is that where you have an audience all around you?
All around. That's like, I have literal nightmares that we get assigned. There are some shows that it could work for.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of our concepts would be really tricky to do in the round.
Yeah, there is one stage, as far as I'm aware, there's only one stage in the round. And that's the big joke every year is like, oh, I can't. One of the questions is, can you do your show in the round? And you're like, oh, darn,
Nope.
I really couldn't.
Oh, can't do it.
Sorry.
Wow, that sounds like a coordination nightmare and a really cool sort of experience for both the people who can attend and everyone involved.
I feel like a fight scene in that would be really cool, though.
Yeah,
like,
in the round.
I know, we
It
did
would be.
think about that.
Yeah. That would be like the only saving grace, would be doing a fight scene in the round.
You got any favorite sea shanties now?
Oh, man. I've been singing Leave Her Johnny for like weeks.
Yeah. Our rendition of Leave Her Johnny, which we have called Leave Her Bonnie, is one of my favorite in the entire show. There's some really good harmonies in there.
Yeah.
And I'm also really partial to our rendition of Wellerman, which is very different than anything anyone will probably hear.
Yeah.
I don't want to spoil it, but
that was the one that went like semi-viral like 8
Yeah.
months ago, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
yeah, we're taking a very different spin on that, and it should give you an emotional gut punch, which sounds weird if you know that song, but I think we're gonna pull it off.
It is hauntingly beautiful.
Yeah.
Nice. Sounds awesome. We
Yeah.
got to try and get over to this thing.
Yeah.
I was gonna ask if we could like sing one, but maybe we don't.
What we?
I feel like it'd be great.
We would love to hear your favorite sea shanties.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know a lot of sea shanties. I remember when they were coming across the social medias and kind of mass, but I guess the Wellerman. I guess the Wellerman one. Otherwise, I saw the one that Trailer Park Boys did. I think that might be Wellerman 2 or whatever, but it was a Trailer Park Boys
I haven't seen
parody.
that. I'll have to look it up.
Bubbles was singing it.
Oh, it was that same one. Yeah. It's like that week in the 90s where everyone liked Gregorian chants.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Yep.
Next show.
There we go.
All Gregorian chants.
I bet we could do that in the round.
I'm sure we could. I'm sure we
You heard
could.
it here. Get it
Yeah,
around.
yeah, right.
There'll be Gregorian fighting monks.
Ooh. I don't hate that.
If y'all make fun of it for the next couple
right.
weeks, it might just happen.
I also forgot about one of my other favorite sea shanties. It's a new one, so we couldn't put it in the show because it's not public domain. But there's one called Twiddles. I can't remember who
Oh, yeah.
it's by, but it's like a a feminist take on sea shanties.
It's
kind of.
hilarious.
It's pretty
really good. Blow the Man Down is one that we do. A couple of them. Blow the Man Down and What Do You Do with a Drunken Sailor? I feel like we sang in elementary school.
For sure.
Mm-hmm.
So, there will be ones that people know.
I wouldn't have even considered that. I guess I knew that was a sea shanty, but like when you say it, like I register it because I sang that in grade school too.
We did the same thing when we were looking for sea shanties for the show. I think we saw that and we were like, what? Oh yeah, that does work. We can do that.
That's in the public domain.
Yeah.
Nice.
And that one's in the preview too. The little preview clip that you did.
Yep.
Because there's like in the clip, if you, we'll probably post a link to it in this video too, but you can see that they have that bit where the men introduce the thing, and then I believe the pirate protagonists come out and kind of dismiss their introduction.
Yep. Yes.
Yeah.
And then I think we do 5 of our 7 sea shanties during that preview. So it's a pretty good take of what's to come.
In getting ready for the Fringe Festival, are you also planning any show dates afterwards, or is that sort of follow if all goes smoothly, or how's that work?
We hope so.
Yeah.
I think we're just trying to get through Fringe first, and then we'll
One thing at a
we'll
time.
see. Yeah, then we'll see what happens. But we did a Mankato performance of Chisago, and that went really well. So I'm hoping that we'll be able to do that again for Bonnie and Reed for people who can't make it up to the cities.
Because then you have the thing, right? Like you wrote this thing and you did it, and now
Yeah.
it's like there.
Yeah.
It's, I don't know. It's like sporting equipment that you bought.
Yeah.
It's like if I had rollerblades, I would. I do have a skateboard in my closet. I'm like, oh, I should.
Probably take that out.
That's how I feel about all our costumes and props. I'm like, we can never get rid of this because what if we need it again?
Yep.
Like,
You never know.
We've got it just in case.
Yeah.
Now we have a bunch of swords.
Yeah. Well, one of our cast members, I don't know if you know this, suggested that maybe we perform it at the Renfest.
Oh, that's genius.
Mm-hmm.
Let's do it.
That is a cool idea.
Yeah.
I mean, the it sounds awesome. I think the pirates are pretty neat. And then everybody singing sea shanties, that sounds like it could go over pretty well too. So I think it'd be fun to see this one.
Yeah.
See what it can do.
If we want to, how do we?
Let me whip out my dates. We got some weird dates. So the Minnesota Fringe Festival runs from August 4th through the 14th. Our shows are the 6th at 7 p.m., the 7th at 5:30 p.m., the 8th at 10 p.m., the 12th at 8:30 p.m., and the 14th at 1 p.m. You can get tickets at Minnesota Fringe Festival.
I think it's just
I was
Minnesota Fringe.
literally just on the website.
Well, you find that.
MinnesotaFringe.org.
Okay. And we're at the Rarig Thrust stage and
Yep.
Rarig Center on the U of M campus.
Yeah. Tickets, you can get them at MinnesotaFringe.org. You can search the shows, Bonnie and Reed. Ours will pop up. You can get tickets there. You can also get tickets day of. Easy peasy.
What's on the other side of Fringe? Is there any like competitive element, or is there like awards given through, or like what apart from the opportunity to perform is the benefit of Fringe?
Yeah, so there are a few awards that are given out. There are 3 audience pick awards where audience members get to vote on their favorite show. 3 shows get that. There's a Spirit of the Fringe award that is given to usually one show. There were 2 last time.
We tied last time.
We tied last time. And that is decided on by a committee, I believe.
No, that one is also voted.
Oh, that's also voted
Yep,
by
audience.
audience.
Yep.
Oh, okay. Of what show best encompasses the Fringe Festival. And then every show, the best selling show at each venue gets a prize as well. An award, not a prize.
Yeah. And then there's a couple artist-based
Yes.
awards. Artists get passes so they can go and see shows for free since we're all up there and supporting each other. And then we can vote on our favorite shows. And then I believe the staff.
Oh,
There's
yes.
either a staff or a committee that has their own as well.
Yes.
So there's a few
Yeah.
awards.
Yeah.
Neat.
Cool.
Is there anything else that we haven't talked about that we should get into? We got podcast. We've covered a bit of the Fringe Festival and productions. Anything y'all want to talk about?
Plugs. You plugs? Anyone you want to just shout out when you're up here on the internet?
I don't think so.
I mean, we should probably shout out Callie for getting us on here.
Yeah, probably.
Callie's in our cast. She's incredible. If you love Callie, come see Callie.
And the rest of our cast.
No, just Callie.
Okay.
You heard it here. Just Callie, the
Just
best.
Callie.
We pick favorites here on the TF
Yeah.
Cast.
Yeah, we do. Don't tell the others.
Well, the others didn't get us a podcast spot, so.
That's great. Well, we'll send them over to check out the podcast and the upcoming Fringe Festival, which is very exciting.
Sure. And one more time on the links for that podcast.
The podcast is You Say Bitch Like It's a Bad Thing. Our website is yousaybpodcast.com. And then social media is
UCB Podcast. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram.
Cool.
Awesome.
Well, thanks so much for coming on the show. It was really fun, and it was awesome that there was even more than I ever imagined to talk about.
Well, thank you for having us.
Thanks.
Yeah.